Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the National Parents Union Restorative evening session. My name is Steve Vigil. I'm the Director of Organizing with the National Parents Union. I'll be sitting in for Marisol tonight. She may be joining us in a bit. She has something that she had to take care of. So if she's able to do it, she's going to join in. So thank you all. And I'd just like to say tonight, we have a very special guest, Mr. Jason B. Allen, educator from Atlanta, Georgia, educator, blogger, activist, advocate. We'll be speaking a little bit about what he's doing, and also just kind of talking about how we take care of ourselves, and we're just gonna have a conversation, see where it flows. But first off, I'm gonna see if I could get this right. I did it the last time, so I'm trying to get it right in terms of I know Marisol and Anjali like to start off the show doing a little breathing exercise and whatnot, and just kind of give a chance to, at the end of the day, for folks to just take a little moment and let go of everything that's gone on in the day, and prepare yourselves for having a nice evening and hopefully a very nice conversation. So let me remember, I think we do 7 breaths in and 4 breaths out. And if that's not how we do it, that's how we're doing it tonight. All right. So we're going to do, I think we'll try to do 3 breaths, maybe 4, and see how my count goes. And so we'll breathe in for 7 breaths. No, breathe in for 4 breaths. There we go. Flipping it. And breathe out for 7 breaths. And we'll do that 3 times. Okay. And I'll give you the count. If you want, just go ahead, close your eyes, and we'll begin. So breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, y'all. Well, let's get it going. I'm going to bring in Jason, and we will get the conversation. Jason, what's going on, man?
Good evening, Steve, and everyone who's watching. Hello.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight on the National Parents Union Restorative session.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I definitely am a big fan and supporter of the National Parent Union. The leadership, I can't say much more about my family, but I'm just so proud and honored of the work that they are doing across the nation in regards to engaging parents in such pivotal conversations about the reform and changes that we need to see in our public school system. So yes, kudos to you guys and the work that's being done.
Well, thank you. And likewise, brother, really appreciate you coming on. You're an educator yourself. You're a teacher. You're an advocate. You do a lot of writing on the situations that are affecting our parents, on our students, and our teachers as well, which I really think is a key element. And I think we really need to highlight not just the support of Black and Brown students and Black and Brown parents, but also Black and Brown educators as well, because that's, as a child of educators, and particularly my father, who started outside as an activist and advocate, and then transitioned into becoming an educator himself. I know a lot of the struggles that they go through. So I really appreciate you being on here, and we're looking forward to having that conversation.
Yes.
One thing I would just like to start maybe briefly on, and we talked a little bit about it ahead of time, and then we'll get into some of the conversation around the education. I had a couple brothers of mine on a couple weeks ago when we talked about just as men of color and how we take care of ourselves, men of color who are engaged in our communities and are doing the work, how we also take care of ourselves and how we take care of ourselves personally and how we model that to the community and also especially to young men and the boys. Because a lot of times I don't think we get those opportunities. And I don't know if I know myself, for me, the power of spirituality, having the connection with a high, to me, it's this connection to my ancestors, connecting through prayer, through ceremony, something that that I've learned, some of which I was handed down through my family, some of which I've learned as I've come up, has been something that's been really key in supporting me and giving me the strength, especially in this crazy time with COVID, with just a lot of protests. We had another brother shot by police in Philly 2 nights ago, and we got a lot of action going on the street. People out there upset, protesting what's going on. There's a lot coming at us in the community, and as we stand up and we stand forth, and especially when you're dealing with young folks. Maybe if you want to spend a few moments just sharing how you prepare yourself when you know you're going to be facing young people or parents that might be feeling feeling some anxiety, feeling some pressure. And I know particularly with a lot of our Black and brown students, this is daily. It's not something that we talk about it. And I want to shout out one of our NPU team as well. Christina Laster talked about this earlier in a couple of the meetings we had. In just that, this isn't, when we talk about what's going on and we talk about a lot of the anxiety that people are feeling in general right now, I'd say in this country, that's nothing new for Black and brown communities. And as somebody who stands up and teaches young people and represents them, what are some of the things you do to take care of yourself?
So it's so funny you are bringing up self-care. I blog for the Bright Beam Network through my continual work with Atlanta. So you can definitely check out my article on self-care that I speak to some of the things that I have done throughout this year for self-care at Atlanta.org. That's EDLANTA.org. I would definitely encourage everyone to make sure they take a moment to themselves. I spoke on a couple of other podcasts about the importance of just having a moment. And if that moment, for me, I like that moment to be the bathroom. I was raised as the bathroom is a very sacred place. So if someone's in the restroom or bathroom, let them have their time, right?
Yeah.
And, just in the craziness of having to sit at a desk a lot to, mentor virtually, teach virtually, do these town halls virtually, it's good to just get away from the TV and media. And sometimes I just enjoy, taking a long bath where I get to read. Currently reading Lovecraft Country, which is amazing. It's a show on HBO. It's also an amazing book. The book definitely gets more into America's demons, specifically around racial injustices that we're seeing. So taking a moment, reading, spending time outside. I know that the weather is changing, but there are beautiful mornings to just sit outside, take some time to relax, meditate. I like to definitely connect with nature. I think that that's a way for us to connect with our ancestors and, their spirits. So I have ancestors behind me, as you can see on my wall, to represent not just who I am, the fight for equity, equality in the United States, across the world, really, but also as a constant reminder from whence we came. And, just pivoting off of their strength, their wisdom, their losses, their struggles, their downfalls, because those things are pivotal parts of their stories. And so I share that to end with storytelling. I think that it is amazing that so many people spend hours on social media, giving their opinions, sharing their stories, and we spend so less time talking with our own families about our struggles, about our successes, about our desires, about our visions, about our dreams, about our expectations. And so, storytelling, spending time with your loved ones, your family, your neighbors, getting to know them, sharing, those intimate moments about what's in your heart and what's in your spirit, definitely helps to soothe the mind and keep you at peace, keep you at balance. So, yes, self-care, definitely important.
I really like that, and actually, I appreciate all the pictures of who you have on your wall and your ancestors, your family, what that means to you. I grew up in a home where we had a wall. The living room wall was just a whole bunch of pictures, and it was the pictures of my ancestors, my aunts and uncles, my great aunts and uncles, their family members. Folks that I'd never met, never seen, who'd passed long before I'd been around. They were on that wall, and my dad would always tell stories about who they were, how they were related to us, what their stories were, what their experiences were, and I think that's important in terms of getting a grounding. Thinking earlier to the conversation we had, and I'm sorry if I keep reflecting. I've been on a couple of shows today and a couple of meetings, but earlier on the Black Wall Street Times, we had a conversation, and we're speaking with Nehemiah Frank, one of our delegates, and the editor and founder of the Black Wall Street Times, and he talked about being a teacher and being a principal at the Greenwood Learning Academy in his community in Tulsa, and just the power of having somebody who understands the history of their community in an education space, that could bring that perspective. Because I think that's something, part of what I've done in my work prior to NPU is working in the community on the issue of violence and working with young people. And one of the organizations I was with when I was younger was an organization called Barrios Unidos, which means United Neighborhoods in English, but it's much more like barrios, more like community. It's got a more, there's more to it, right? And one of the concepts we talked about was cultura cura, but that your culture heals. And I think a big part of that is knowing our history, knowing who our ancestors were, knowing where we come from, and having that very grounding presence, and thinking about all the struggles that our ancestors went through to create who we are today. That really is to me is a big driver in what keeps me going. And I know, and that's something within the family. We get together and we do a lot of storytelling, and
that's powerful.
And I think that's beautiful that's, you've got that right there, because that's, especially with Black and brown communities, we don't always have the luxury or the privilege of knowing where we come from. And I feel very blessed that I have that from my father's side and my mother's side as well. I'm white and Mexican, but I got the knowledge of both sides. But on the Latino side, it's not always as easy knowing where you come from.
And I can totally identify with that. I think that, as you mentioned, there are a lot of Black and brown mixed race families that can identify with the same sentiments. And that's one of the reasons a lot of these pictures I had in my classroom. And so it was a way of me being able to teach culture and infuse it into every lesson, not just during Black History Month. And that's the point that I want to drive about helping people connect with their identity. So I love to do these public service announcements when I'm on town halls. And if you watch our podcast on Mondays that are powered by Citizens Ed at 2 p.m., I'm always dropping public service announcements. So when you're talking about families and cultural connection, I always think of a couple of organizations, but specifically the Gwinnett Educators for Equity and Justice. They are collectively working together with retired educators, teachers who are currently in the district, and those who are really supporting the need for equity and inclusion for the public school system. And one of the things that they're proposing is for the school system to adopt culturally inclusive curriculum. I have talked about this all
Absolutely.
throughout this year, last school year and this school year, specifically in the pandemic, because a lot of teachers were at a loss with not being able to be in their classrooms and using the materials that they had physically to
Mm-hmm.
present to their students about the importance of culture. And so here again is another book, The Atlanta Riot. Uh, it happened in 1906. I use this when I'm mentoring and working with my students, and I wanted to just highlight the novel again is The Atlanta Riot and how it connects to history, culture, and family, and also with Brother Neo's work with the Black Wall Street Times and what happened with Greenwood. You know, there
Yeah.
were over 89 massacres that happened throughout
Yeah.
America in regards to killing and disenfranchising Black Americans,
Yeah.
you know, Afro Latino Americans.
Yeah.
And so this is an intricate part of our history as Americans, but it also speaks to each of our culture. And so knowledge is power,
Yeah.
helping us to learn our history and how our families connect to different places in time also gives us a stronger sense of who we are. And so I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to share that work again that the Gwinnett Educators for Equity and Justice are lifting up here in Georgia, but also partnering with NPU,
Yeah.
who we've had some meetings with together on how to advance these strategies for social change.
Yeah. I mean that's critical when we talk about even in the curriculums in our schools. Um, so much of the history of this country is left out of it,
Oh yeah.
and what we get, and also that just in terms of how we're taught, that's a tool of keeping students down. That you know, when you leave a people out of a history book, or at best relegated to, and I'm not saying this in trying to say this disrespectfully, but you know, we get a month a year, right? Like what kind of, what is that?
Well, you know, Steve, but then let's even go there, right? Black
Yeah.
History Month is the shortest month of the year, which is nothing wrong with that. I commend Carter G. Woodson and what that, you know, era of leaders were able to do.
Yeah.
I think that we have definitely grown even in having a holiday that honors Dr. King. But
Yeah.
look at the disproportionality with, you know, Hispanic Awareness Month. It starts in September and it ends in October instead of it being the month of September. So it can have, you know, okay, hey, this whole month, this is what we're doing. And
Yeah.
so I think that it's designed that way because this is what I've seen in public schools, or this is what I've seen in schools, period, across the board. It's a mechanism of confusion because when September starts, no one is checking for Hispanic Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just being honest, I've seen it in schools. So then when it's like, oh, it's September 17th and Hispanic Awareness Month has started. Well, here is the breakdown. This is what happens. And parents that are watching or activist leaders may see this. Everyone to start talking about, oh, what are we going to do? And oh, it's a whole week conversation about how we missed the whole beginning of September with the month. So by the time you get all into the confusion, now it's October and
Mm-hmm.
people are like, well, what are we going to do? And then unfortunately, Hispanic Awareness Month becomes overshadowed by Breast Cancer Awareness Month and Advocacy Awareness Month
Right.
and Red Ribbon Week, all of these homecoming, all of these things that happen in October. And so we need to have a clear identifying month for Hispanic Awareness Month where it's uplifted, it's celebrated,
Mm-hmm.
and also there are strong call to actions. Because just so everyone is aware that's watching, there are school districts across the nation that do not even have parent and student handbooks that are translated in Spanish. When I
Yeah.
was a district administrator in Atlanta Public Schools, that was one of the probably one of the reasons why they pushed us out. But that was one of the pieces that we advocated for because, again, we have Afro Latino, we have Hispanic Latino X families that we can't reach because we're not even breaking down the school policies and how school works
Mm-hmm.
for these families. So when
Mm-hmm.
we talk about having a clear month for Hispanic Awareness Month, we need those strong call to actions to make sure that there's also equitable resources for language barriers
Yeah.
and families that are supporting children that may be in ESOL programs or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think just get into what's happening there, what y'all are doing in Gwinnett County. I mean, I think that speaks to the larger picture of just we need this to be integrated. You know, we need to have our culture, our histories reflected in every day in our schooling, in our curriculums. We need to speak that to the young people. We need to uplift them. And we need to engage with their parents. I really appreciate that piece on that, because that's something that we've been discussing a lot. Obviously, as a parent union, we're talking, and we had this conversation a little bit earlier as well. And then one of the other shows is, you know, the idea of parent power and parents having influence in a school. You know, in certain communities, that's just a given. It's just when it comes to our communities, somehow it becomes a burden. The resources aren't there. I mean, reaching out to parents, and particularly with a lot of immigrant parents, a lot of immigrant Latino parents, and others, there needs to be more effort put into reaching the parents, and schools should be open to everybody. I mean, just you know,
I'm laughing, Steve, because I used to be a family engagement specialist in Atlanta, and family engagement across the nation. You know, Karen Mapp at Harvard has an amazing program, and they speak to the barriers around family engagement. Here's one of the issues: the stigma around Title I, and the complacency of school districts to only engage families through federal dollars that restrict them from really meeting the needs of our families. Because here's the deal: we as leaders, we as activists, we as educators know that if I engage parents and they're engaged, behavior is going to be different. If I have a connection with parents and I'm engaged with them, then we know that the educational outcomes of the students are going to change. But when parents and teachers are connected, parents feel more comfortable to break down those barriers where they did not have the best experiences with the public education system. And the last point I want to make to what you just said, Steve, too, is that if I'm overwhelmed economically and I'm working 2 or 3 jobs, you know, food may or may not be on the table. You know, we know the challenges with transitive families that are moving from place to place, the mobility rates, the lack of transportation, economic and workforce development is poor, literacy rates. All of these factors add into the things that parents have to deal with on a daily basis. And so being able to advocate for their child, being able to go back and forth with school leaders and district officials about what should be happening for their child, unfortunately, is not at the top of their list. And it's not because they don't want to, but a lot of times parents have to put the parent piece first as opposed to being able to put the advocacy hat on. And that's what makes us so pivotal in this work, because we as grandparents, we as aunts and uncles, we as teachers, we as social workers, we as educational activists, we take on the bloodstained banner of making sure that these parents' voices are lifted and heard so that their children can get truly what is needed in their educational paths.
And I like that, because that's something, you know, I really like you expressing it that way, because I think people, when we think, you know, I think traditionally in this country, when people think of parent involvement, I think they're thinking the nuclear family, and they're thinking about families that don't necessarily look like a lot of our families look. And we know very well we have, you know, we have families that are multi-generational, and you know, we've got people from grandparents to grandkids and extended family members living under the same roof. Sometimes the best placed person to advocate for that child is not necessarily their parent, and that's not because the parent doesn't care, but to your point, the parents got to put the other, you know, they've got to figure out how they're going to get to work, how they're going to pay the bills, how they're going to put food on the table. I mean, we've got to talk about all the obstacles
that's true
that our communities face. And we really, you know, not just in terms of parent. And when we talk, I like it, it's family engagement, because it's not just engaging with parents. We need to engage with the whole family.
We have to, most definitely. We have to. Steve, I have a public service announcement for families that are watching, because again, yes, holding school districts accountable, making sure they have equity in their family engagement programs is critically important. making sure that teachers, special education teachers and general education teachers have strong relationships with their families, that the social services from the counselor to the social worker are all working together to service our children. However, parents do still play a part. And
Oh,
this is what I say to parents. Now, listen, we also can't spend time playing the blame game,
yeah.
because I'm a middle school teacher, and I'd be damned if I have another child that comes to me in middle school that is struggling to spell their name, that is
Hmm.
struggling to spell their street name. Because yes, the system has failed, but we as a village have failed, because that means that no one in the family is reading with this child. No
Hmm.
one is looking at anything this child is writing down. No one is requiring this child to do anything that is going to help them become a productive citizen in the future. Our children are an investment, right?
Right.
You know, Whitney Houston said, I believe the children are our future, and they are. And so I always give that public service announcement that parents, let's not get caught up in the blame game, but let's also make sure that we're being responsible and doing everything that we possibly can to have those check-in points with our children to make sure that they are okay.
Yeah. No, man. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's, I think more often than not, a lot of the parents that I've dealt with, and I'd have to say, a lot of times I say I'm always kind of working on the back end in terms of working with kids that have already been caught up in the system and helping to try to help them re-enter. And I think a lot of parents struggle with, I don't want to say the blame, but I think a lot of parents kind of own their children kind of perceived failure. And I don't like to put it in terms of failure, but I mean,
I
it's,
know,
you know what I'm
exactly
saying?
what you're
Like there's
saying.
that sense of, and I think to your point, I think when we talk about empowering parents, and that's one of the things we've been talking about a lot. And I know it's funny talking to my dad about what he did back in the day, working with migrant parents. A lot of it is, parents want to see their children succeed. I don't know any parents that don't want to see their children succeed.
Yes.
I don't know any.
And they
I
may
mean,
not know how to, do it. And that's why, I love family engagement. It's
yeah.
a, I attribute it to my principal in Atlanta, Mr. Aaron Fernandez. When he hired me, he saw me working in the after school program in Atlanta at Harper Archer Middle School. And, he sent the APM, Miss Harris. So shout out to Miss Harris. I love these awesome instructional leaders. And she basically said, hey, are you able to come to the school on Monday? And I was like, what school? She was, she told me the school name, et cetera, so forth. And when I got there, I was so impressed with Mr. Fernando, because he was the first principal that had ever really spoke to the importance of coalition building with parents. And he was like, in order for us to reach the students, you have to reach the families, and had strategies of how, as a family engagement specialist, that I ensured that the parent liaisons, the teachers were all working in tandem to do, was to make sure that there were creative ways for parents to continue education at home. Because every parent doesn't understand the pedagogy that teachers, follow
Yeah.
when we're teaching our students. And so it's critically important for us to share our strategies with parents. So just one quick strategy, because I know that I can give a lot of information at one time, so I'm trying to break it down. But one of the strategies that I tell parents to do, even when for the busy parent, especially we call them the helicopter parents that have a lot to do as you're picking up your child and you're on the go, find things to talk about, whether it's something on the radio station or, asking them about, a radio ad just to start
Hmm.
conversation with them. Ask them about the street signs. Like, what shape is that again? I
Yeah.
forgot what shape that is. What shape is that? What does that mean?
Yeah.
How is that constructed? A quick numbers game to do as you're driving. Use the numbers on the exit sign and say, okay, it's 298. What does that equal? And shockingly enough, it becomes very competitive for parents and
Yeah.
for their kids, because it's like, if the kids don't know the answer, parents will come back to me and they'll tell me, okay, now I had to brush up on my skills because
Yeah.
they were asking me like, well, okay, well, what's the answer? Because I can't think of it. What is the answer? So it's something fun to do. It's free.
Yeah.
It's engaging,
Yeah.
and it's a good way for parents to check where their children are. because if it's a small number like 24 and your child can't give you the sum total of those numbers, then okay, wait a minute, something's going wrong with
Yeah.
critical thinking or math processing or processing skills in general. So just a quick strategy on what parents can do in a creative way to continue conversations and methodologies around education at home.
I love that, because I think that was something, um, I, I think you reminded me. I was walking, lived in New York for a long time, and was walking down the street in Brooklyn with my boy, and we're with his, we're with his two little girls, and we're walking by a Chase Bank, and his little daughter looks up and says, in Spanish, she's like, "Mira, papi, an octagon." She's like 5 years old. She's like, "Look, Dad, an octagon." I'm like, I look at my boy, and he's like, "That's not me, man. That's her mom." Right? But it's like those kind of conversations like that. I think that's key. I mean, and you see that, and parents have that. They know that. I think there's that intuitive nature of like, you want to interact with your child, you want to teach them about what's going on. And I think when we share those kind of strategies with them, and actually, they might just see it as how you're interacting with the child. But when you say, hey, this actually, you're able to tell a lot about where your child's at, that you can speak to the teacher about, and that's going to help the teacher as well, in terms of like, okay, this is an area that I could focus on to help this particular child, and I have got relationship with the parent, and that's, I mean, you're reinforcing that education, and at the same time, you're helping the parent in terms of understanding the pedagogy behind the teaching, which I think it is just so crucial. It just that engagement, because especially I think a lot of the speaking with some of our folks that are dealing with immigrant community, and they're just, the parents are doing it, but they just sometimes don't feel like because of maybe culture or tradition, how things work in their country of origin, they don't feel like they can engage with the educational system like that, or they don't feel like they can speak to parents like that, and they're doing it already. And it's just like, sometimes you just need to open up the door and say, hey, that fits perfect with that's what we need to talk about. That we need to hear that from you.
That building relationship piece is so critically important, and students need to see that. Too often students don't see their parents and teachers working together as partners, and it speaks a lot. And I make this analogy a lot. Co-teaching doesn't work because co-parenting isn't working. And it speaks to an overall culture of us being able to, humble ourselves enough to say, okay, I'm going to have to work with someone that I may not necessarily prefer to work with. The relationship may have soured, taken a wrong turn. But co-parenting and co-teaching are both areas, quite frankly, that have impacted a lot of Black and Brown families. Even families where, the children may be with the father and there's a stepmom, or vice versa. So how step parents play a role in this, how foster parents play a role in this. And that's why Karen Mapp's program at Harvard is so critically important, because it really prepares school leaders, superintendents, family engagement district leaders to facilitate and implement strong mechanisms of building relationships with their families and communities, because the data has shown that when families are engaged, when communities are engaged, when nonprofit grassroots organizations are partners, not just, the Fords and Coca-Colas and Targets and Kohl's and
grassroots, the community folks.
The grassroots organizations are the organizations when the after school program at the community schools are whack or bogus or not fun or whatever adjective
or
that describes how children do not like them. When they fail, these children are finding the PALs or police athletic leagues in the neighborhoods that have programs. They're finding the Big Brother, Big Sister programs. They're finding the Casey Vinings and Sean Waltons and Chris Browns of the world who have community initiatives that are engaging these youth. And those are the partnerships that schools should be developing to engage their families and communities in ensuring that every child every child has a successful pathway, and we have too many children in 2020 in a digital technology era that we're failing, and there's no reason for that other than the reality of systemic racism and prejudices that still exist, but there's no knowledge base that's blocking us from building coalitions, implementing and correcting policies that prevent us from putting the dollars in the right place to engage families, helping build communities that build and elevate the success of students that become the workforce, that become the next innovators, that become the next inventors and game changers that we need to continue the work that our ancestors have started.
Oh, I love it, and actually, that's a great segue to bringing in. We got somebody creeping in here who's a former school leader, who's developed who's been working on policy about education, high quality education as a civil right.
Yes.
So I mean, and when we talk, and Tim, our the NPU COO, always anytime anybody speaks about the ancestors,
oh yes,
he's talking about this woman right here. Which side is she from me?
Well, this woman is such a intricate part of our work. I try not to. She's one of the people in talking about them that I get emotional about. And shout out to Auntie Irma. Actually, I found this bracelet. I don't know if you can see it. So first time I met Mom, I had this on. We were in a training retreat for our group of activists, and just such a powerful connection. I was able to share with them my tenure and journey in living in Cuba and in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and just the connection with the Afro and Latino culture is just so powerful. So hello and good evening to my sister, and so honored to be on here with you all.
Oh, me too. And I was really looking forward to having the conversation with you, Jason, because number one, I miss you and I wanted to check in, and how beautiful. So I had to, I had a doctor's appointment that I just decided like I have to make this appointment. And so I asked Steve to jump in, and I have had the honor of having like a real true deep connection with both of you, and a connection immediately of the heart. And I believe, because I know that my ancestors have my back and your ancestors have yours, that our ancestors collectively are what brought us together. Conversations that I've had with both, the moments that we have shared, have just been very, very powerful and very real. And so I just want to take this opportunity and check in with both of you. It was really beautiful because I came in a couple minutes ago and I was just listening and I was creeping, hearing you talk with passion about the work and about what's right for kids and what's right for our Black and brown kids. It was just really beautiful. And I was like, I don't want to go on. I just want to watch. But I want to know, like, how are you guys doing? But you're both like hermanos de mi corazón. How are you? How is your spirit? How is your soul?
Powerful. I would say I'm in a good space right now. It's been very difficult with what's happening in society. I was just talking with Tanisha and Neo on our podcast on Monday, and I shared with them a story about how, just a recent outing that I was, in and having to leave out of the house, I got a chance to speak with the elderly Caucasian woman and also an elderly Black woman. And they both, engaged me in conversation. They were very weary in their spirit about, this election and what's happening locally, and, even getting their children engaged with voting. And the Caucasian, grandmother, when she was speaking to me, she was just, admiring me and saying that, I wish that, my sons were more engaged and they would have their families more engaged, in the voting process, because my husband passed away this year. He had pre-existing conditions and he didn't make it. So that shook me because I'm sitting up here and I'm like, this is a elderly white woman talking to me. And I knew that it had to be something spiritually because where we were in Georgia at that time and just the time and space of this uh, climate that our country is in, that normally wouldn't be happening. And so a couple of minutes after that, about 15 minutes or so passed by, and I, was engaged in a conversation with the Black grandmother who was in the same space. And so, Marisol, you know that my heart is with seniors. My family's foundation is named after my ancestors, my great grandmothers, who both respectfully, or in their own respects, raised my grandparents. Both of my parents were raised by my great grandmothers. And so our foundation, we support grandparents raising school age children. And, the Black grandmother was just saying how her husband couldn't even come to the door because he has pre-existing conditions. And, he's concerned. He's, trying to get back to work and, do things because if, this Supreme Court appointee, goes with, we're going to reverse, Roe versus Wade and change healthcare, what is that going to look like for us? We have so many of our friends who spiritually are checking out and just are giving up and don't want to live. And I'm sharing that to say that it did something to my spirit because who is lifting up their voices? Who is making sure that grandparents and seniors that are raising school age children, their voices are being heard? I had a student that passed away this year. She had a pre-existing condition. And I remember this time last year when she went into the hospital. And, she transitioned this year, unfortunately. And there are so many stories like that. And how are we supporting these families? And so a part of me is resilient because the work has to be done. But a part of me is in agonizing pain because there is a hopeless population of people that are not even being reached. And that breaks my heart.
So, Jason, what is it that gets you up every day? And I think because
Oh,
I mean, I know that you have a a young baby at home, or she might not be a baby, but what is it that gets you up every day to keep going?
exactly what you just mentioned. Family gets me up every day. That is my motivation. My sister has had the first grandchild, Liliana, and of course, Lily's foundation was named after my great grandmothers. They both ironically had the same name, which is Lily. And so young Lily is here now, Liliana, and she'll be joined by the second grandchild. My baby sister and my brother-in-law are preparing for their daughter to be here at the end of November. And so that's what keeps me going. I want my nieces and I want, my children as I'm building, my partner and I building out our family, I want to be here for them because I play an intricate role in my father and my mother's side of the family. I'm the historian. A lot of these pictures, and I want to show this one picture if you see of the woman that's kind of in the center. She has a large portrait right there. She's my aunt, who was an educator, longtime educator and artist. She worked at Fresno State and was big on Afro Latino art. And so I believe that women of color are the center of the earth. And that's why she's the center of all of these photos because it's a spiritual connection. And so, my family, my ancestors, the work that they started on my mother's side, my great great grandmother in 1908, championed for Black and brown children to be able to have a free education in public school settings. In West Virginia. And so I have a lineage of ancestors that were activists and educators and entrepreneurs. And so being able to have my great grandfather's journal, right? I pick that up and I read it at times. I have a walking stick that reminds me of my great grandmother who lived to be 104. And, just remembering them consciously, that is what keeps me motivated. It keeps me going and wakes me up every morning that I'm able to get up, that I open these eyes. I'm thankful for them and thankful for the spirit of God that allows me to do the work that I do.
I'm just gonna really quick before I ask Steve how he's doing. Thank you for that reminder of gratitude, because I forgot. I forgot. And that, when I wake up in the morning and I open my eyes to thank God, to thank Creator and my ancestors for giving me another day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think it's just everything that's been happening in the world, like, and the work and just everything. I forgot, and I needed you, and I needed that reminder today. So thank you.
It happens often though. We're not always at our best, and we keep going. I think that it's also the things that people don't share. We never know what people are going through and dealing with. I was on a conference call the other day, and I just outright said, listen, I'm trying to live. Like I'm literally trying to live. It's the things that we battle that we don't talk about, that people don't see. And so with that being said, focusing on the work. I mentioned the words of Whitney Houston earlier, that the children are our future. And that motivates me too. Like, I know that God called me to the work of being an educator. Whether I'm in the classroom or not in the classroom, I'm always finding myself in a position to teach, to mentor, to educate, to help people build out their plans of how they're building families and communities. And so it's being in connection with that oneness, with our ancestors from which we came, and also just the spiritual power of God and nature, because they all connect. So I'm honored that you asked me that question. And again, just being able to speak on ancestors and their contribution to what we do and where we are is so pivotal and so important.
Thank you. And thank you for seeing my mom and loving her. So Steve,
Yes.
How are you doing? How is your heart of hearts, my friend?
It's been a rough time. I think not just me. I think a lot of folks have been struggling. Right now, I think I'm doing all right. I'm feeling pretty blessed right now. I had a birthday on Friday. I was didn't really have anything planned for it other than I wanted to go for a swim and took a little dip in the ocean, and then I was invited to go camp with my brother and my sister-in-law's sisters and their partners, and so I got a chance to go. Just thinking about it today, I was like, wow, this weekend I started my birthday with a swim in the ocean, and the next day I got to go camp in the desert with my brother and my sister-in-law and her family, who are my family, who I love very much. And then on Sunday morning, I got to take a hike, and we had, well, the rest of Southern California is seemingly on fire. San Diego had some rain, and we had a cool day, and I got to take a hike in the rain, and couldn't see anything going all the way up the mountain, and was in the fog, and was with a buddy, and we were just kind of trying to follow the trail. We got to the top, and we couldn't see anything because we were right in the middle of the storm, and we just kind of took a little shelter, had a little something to eat. And then it was like, all right, checking the watch, it's time to go back down. And we climbed up to just, because we had to go back over the peak to go back from where we came. And when we got to the top, the storm had passed. And we had views. We could see all the way to San Diego. We could see the ocean between a few peaks, and we could see straight down into Mexico and in the Tijuana, and we could see the San Felipe Islands off the coast of Mexico, and where half an hour before we couldn't see with maybe 4 or 5 feet in front of our face. So just thinking about what Jason said in terms of, it's not just our ancestors, but it's our connection with the earth. And for me, that was definitely what I needed, because I've been struggling. I'm looking at this election, and Marisol, where I've worked before, and Jason, I spent quite a bit of time working with the United Nations and UN peacekeeping and post-conflict countries. And I worked on elections, supporting, doing kind of the not elections observer and all that sort of thing, but actually operationally making sure the elections are free, fair, and transparent, working with electoral commissions and a lot of the things that I've seen in other countries in terms of irregularities and how people are held back and how how voter suppression works, and also just in terms of the dehumanization of people that goes on. I've been seeing that. We've been seeing that here, and that really is concerning to me. But at the same time, it's all the more reason why we get up and we do this work. I think one of the things, and just getting to the town hall and encourage everybody to tune into the town hall. It's going to be 2 days after the election, and some people might think, wow, that's a little crazy time to have a town hall. But actually, absolutely, you need to check it out, because we're going to have a diverse group of folks talking about what's most important to everybody, and we're talking about our children. We're going to have former Secretary of Education under President Obama, Arnie Duncan, is going to be there, listening to parents, and parents are going to have a voice. And to me, that's absolutely. I think we need to show that at a time like this in this country's history, we need to step up and we need to show what it could be. And I'm not saying this is going to be easy for everybody. I think to be quite honest, I'm concerned that we're in for some hard times ahead. But I also have faith that when I look out there and I look at the landscape and I see the numbers of people engaging, coming out to vote, advocating, I see that there's a hunger that people have right now. And that presents a wonderful opportunity for us. So that's what I'm trying to focus on. Some days I get up and I don't want to get up. You know what I'm saying? And just like you said, like brother said, man, it's like some days I'm just trying to live, But the same thing, I get up, I got my little sage, I got my little shell, step outside, folks walking their dogs, looking at me, what's that guy burning over there? They don't know. I do my 4 directions, and I thank the Creator for another day of life. Thank for my family. Thank for all my friends, for all my relations, and just try to get on with my day. So
that was great. That was when you said sage, I looked right over in my corner. I have about 22 plants in my office space, and I just looked at that sage and I was like, it's so powerful to do that, because it's a spiritual cleansing, and it is that connection to nature. So Marisol, I'm so glad that you asked us these questions. Steve actually opened us up with the breathing activity, which is so powerful. And also, we talked a little bit about self-care, and I talked about connecting with nature, spending that time outside to enjoy the morning sunrise. Walking your neighborhood. Walking your neighborhood is so amazing. One, because you get to learn about your surroundings, what's happening in your neighborhood, getting to see your neighbors or connecting with your neighbors and making sure they're okay. So that's so powerful, just being able to again have that sense of community. And it connects to the conversation we were having earlier about family engagement and engaging families in our schools, because again, that's another sense of community, right? School is a community within itself. And so how do we connect the spaces where we play and that we live and we congregate for concerts and art shows and cultural celebrations to the work of building and educating our children? Because what we do teach our children is how to be divided, because they don't see churches and religious institutions working with community centers, and they don't see community centers engage with police departments, and police departments adequately working with nonprofits and grassroots organizations and pivotal organizations in organizing people such as the National Parent Union in conversations around how we're protecting our youth, how we're educating our youth, how we're exposing our youth to careers and conversations about what society, when they become adults, in years to come. And so that brings me to one of the things the NPU, Christina, has been supporting us, as well as Neo, with Ed Atlanta's push of building a student coalition. And one of the things that we're working towards is having Black and Brown students specifically to have a seat at the table, whether it's at the school board level, with a seat on the school board. We're asking for that, or we're asking for school boards to have a district-wide student council. But we're being specific with that because we know that in schools that have large populations of our counterparts, or where there's not a strong representation of brown and Black children in the school, or their families are not in positions of power, or they're not teachers that are represented in the school, that these student councils will not be representative of their voices. So we're being very specific around that. We want to design this council in a way where Black students, brown students, biracial or multiracial students, LGBTQ students, students that are disabled or have a disability, students who are homeless, who are in foster care, who have foster parents, or who are in shelters are represented. We want to make sure that Jews and Muslims who are not in the quote unquote traditional Christian religion are represented, because these are students that are disenfranchised, and also students who are from lower income communities. And it's a long conversation, because the reality is all of these different groups have their own needs, and a lot of times they want to advocate, solely or individually. And I'll end on this, that a lot of our activists that have been murdered or assassinated in the United States have been assassinated because they saw the need to bring together these groups. And what we have grown away from is, again, that connecting cultures that are outside of our immediate realm, because again, we all cross over, we all connect in some sorts. I wanted to put that out there into the work that we're doing to build up this next generation, which the data has said is a large generation. 13-year-olds to 17-year-olds right now, they're going to be pivotal in the next presidential election. And so this work is preparing them right now, changing their mindsets right now. Okay, you're living in the Trump era, but do you want this to be the determinant of how successful you are in the years to come? And so putting a lot of focus on engaging the students, and again, bringing up NPU, because we are engaging the students through the student coalition, but we're channeling their families to NPU so that they can be empowered, right? They can get the knowledge of how to build out their own business, how to hold their school leaders accountable, how to change policies, how to get an increase in contracts for minorities in their school district, all the amazing resources that NPU offers. So for those who are in the Atlanta area and Atlanta followers that are tuning in, definitely please check out, they didn't hire me to do this, but please check out the National Parent Union. They are a partner of Atlanta, and they definitely are supporting our work with engaging our students.
And I just want to do, thank you for that plug. And I think what I also want to add is that it's not just the work of really elevating and providing student opportunity, but learning with them. Learning from them and with them, because this generation has I think we need to break down those barriers of we're the adults and they're the kids, right? Because they have a lot of teachers. And I think learning from them. And one of the things that NPU members, what we're looking at building, and speaking of Christina, is looking at building is an advocacy camp for students and families. So working together on how to write an op-ed, how to write a speech, to go advocate at a school board, state level or federal level. And so, and that is going to be open to NPU members for free. So make sure that you are a member of NPU. If your organization, like Atlanta, we need to make sure that it's a organizational partner with us, even if you're not a 50, established 501c3 or a business, whatever that looks like. But we're always trying to get our partners, our organizational partners, and our individual partners. Hi, my tia Yoli. She's on, my auntie. So thank you for that plug, and thank you both for being here and for holding down and sharing yourselves with our people. Dr. Anjali is actually the person who taught me the breathing technique that Steve did, and we do that at the start of every show. Her show will be on Friday. She has Stephanie Noriega from Tucson, who is a social worker. I had her on the show. Phenomenal woman. So please make sure that you catch it. And also, I'm going to make an announcement. So Anjali and I are going to have a special edition show on a restorative check-in on election night on Tuesday. So we haven't looked at, we haven't, built it out yet, but we will be offering a special show Tuesday night because we know that there's a lot of emotions happening around this election. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. And I
love you.
I have to shout out.
We're at the end.
I have to shout out your tia Yoli as well. Hi, Yolanda.
Yeah, look, I have one more public service announcement. I'm glad you mentioned next Tuesday, because on next Monday, on our podcast that Tanisha, Neo, and I do through Citizen Ed, we will be having on civil rights attorneys. Of course, we know there's a lot of anxiety, especially for people of color. Again, those who have various religious backgrounds, from various economic communities, have a lot of real concerns about what happens after the election. There were several news stories that have been showing supporters of Trump that have been attacking other people who may not be supporting him or want him removed from office. And that's a realistic thing, because this is not just happening at demonstrations, but these are happening at grocery stores. They're happening in plazas. And so I want to also make sure that we're cautioning people to travel in groups, travel in pairs, make sure that you're informing your families on where you're going, when you're leaving. If you're going in areas where you see things that may not look right, or you have a weird feeling, utilize these devices. Get on FaceTime. Make sure you're checking in with someone else. We will have those attorneys on our show next week.
What time is your show?
It's at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be powered through Citizen Ed, which of course is a major partner of NPU. One of the attorneys we're going to have on is Gerald Griggs. Gerald and I work together in Atlanta with the People's Uprising, and we have a very strong platform that is driving education reform, criminal justice reform, public safety reform. And we are definitely connected to the 8 Can't Wait that a lot of progressive cities and thinkers are utilizing to make change. But I did want to elevate that conversation as well. It's going to be before the election to help us start to think about planning for what may come after the election. And, if it's not the candidate that you want that gets in office, that again, you have organizations around organizing, such as the People's Uprising, that is branching out across the nation. You have the National Parents Union. If you are an educator, you have organizations like the Center for Black Educators Development, Profound Gentlemen, that are supporting educators to keep educators of color retained in our schools, because our children need representation, and also representation from teachers who are social justice inclined. So I just wanted to put that public service announcement out there to check out our show, to get those pivotal resources on Monday at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, just thank you guys so much for letting me be engaged in this conversation.
Thank you. And I'm just sharing the love from my aunt, who is the most amazing, loving human being on this planet. So as we sign off, I'm sending you with her love. Know that love is a blessing for each of you.
Much love.
I'm feeling it. Much love to you.